The media's distortion warping Britain's views on immigration. We're going to read into this more from Byline Times, you guys. So the unbalanced coverage of migration is twisting public perspective, argues Christensen here. Now this is an argument piece from Christensen we'll look at in a moment here, but this really just has not been, it's been a non-stop discussion for the past several weeks. Immigration. It's been something that's been not just been banged on about by the likes of Reform, but it's been consistently talked about on a consistent basis, consistently hammered into public's minds, and this consistent perception that everyone's problems, all your things would be resolved if we just get rid of the immigrants, if we just stop the boats crossing. And the counter argument from people who sit on this, who are protesting and whatnot, are saying, I'm not racist, but we have an immigration crisis, or things are out of control and whatnot. And their perception is created to them, and I do say the term perception is that if they just go away, life will get better for us, things will be much happier, things will be back the way they used to be. Like this is what they generally want and feel, and this is what has been hammered into them on a consistent basis by certain media and certain politicians, certain political parties on a daily basis. Daily, people go on to the likes of GV News or certain YouTubers and being told the amount of numbers that have come in, the amount of people that have crossed over on the small dinghies. They're being told to be careful, that they can't walk the streets at night anymore for fear of being attacked, that they can't go in a certain area because the majority of a certain religion or a certain skin color is going there. They're being told all these things, and it is constantly creating fear-mongering. Consistent fear-mongering. The same fear-mongering that you were hearing in the run-up to Brexit. Consistent fear-mongering. It's all fear-mongering. And this is the exact same tactic. And this tactic is sadly working. Because despite the fact that you can throw the numbers, you can throw the statistics, and you can throw the facts at them, people will not believe it. There will be people who will just think that you want to let everyone in, that you think that you don't care about immigration, and that you're one of those people that just wants to let every single immigrant come into the country and let us be overrun. Like, this is the perception and mind that they will have. The reality is that these people you can't debate. The problem is that there's an ever-growing number of them in the British public, and I say British public where more and more people are sitting on this position, and are sleeping more and more in this position, more and more, where you're this growing number of people who have got this mindset and are not prepared to listen to any others whatsoever, and it's getting really, and I do use the term, scary, because political debates, proper debates, don't seem to happen anymore. I mean, look at Nigel Farage, right? You notice that Nigel Farage doesn't spend a lot of time in the House of Commons, right? Now they're out on the recess on holiday, right? What's he doing? He's not on holiday like the rest of the MPs. No, he's trying to rile up people. Him and the Reform UK are consistently making speeches and trying to rile up people on a consistent manner. You see, there was recently Sarah Potching with the Reform Women's Group. He did. Nigel Farage talking about the issue with crime. That crime is out of control. It's out of control everywhere, which is not true. But even though you get numbers and statistics thrown at you, because Nigel Farage is telling you it, and he tells you it in such a way that appeals to you, you believe it, rather than looking at facts, statistics, and numbers, and people who actually live in certain areas where some of these numbers and statistics come from as well. And the thing is that there's a great saying about Nigel Farage, is that he always gives you a little bit of truth to go with his lies, and he always does that, and he's very, very good at doing that. But it is not just Nigel Farage and Reform UK which are a problem when it comes to Britain's views on immigration. One of the biggest problems, and we have talked about this many times on this channel, is how the mainstream media covers immigration, how they talk about immigration, and when they have guests on their shows and programs, is how they talk to them and how they counter arguments and points that have been made on those programs. And time again, whether it is from LBC, whether it's from Sky News, whether it's from BBC, Channel 4 do it properly. But even GB News, whatever your thought process, whatever ones that media outlets that you tend to, the vast majority of them, they don't challenge enough. They don't challenge the person sitting in that chair enough when it comes to immigration. It's just nowhere near enough. It's nowhere near enough. And they allow it to slide. They allow it to warp and perceive into people's minds. And what's also happening now is because you have this consistent messaging that I've just been conveying to you all, right? Creates this image, creates the mindset, and especially when people are taking most of their stuff from Facebook groups, from friends online and whatnot who agree with them, rather than listening to views of people that they disagree with. Because remember, people don't like to be proven wrong. There's a lot of people out there who don't like being admitted when they're wrong, or when they're at fault, or when they make mistakes, or that their views are wrong. So they go out of their way to find people who agree with them, and then it reinforces those views. And that's what's happening here as well. Social media has amplified that. Then the mainstream media are amplifying this. Do you guys remember what I said about Reform UK? I said to you guys that the mainstream media want Reform to be next in power. The reason why I told you that is because it would be good PR for them. It would be great publicity for them. It would make them a lot of money because people will be glued to the screens because they would say something crazy or do something crazy. Like MAGA, like the Republicans, like Trump. It's a lot of news. It's a lot of talking. That's exactly what Reform UK are going to be. It's not going to benefit the UK in any way, shape or form. Reform will not benefit the United Kingdom in any way, shape or form by having power. But it's just good publicity. It's just good PR for the mainstream media. It's good news. It's gossip. It gets people the clicks, the likes, the comments, all that stuff. That's why Reform UK, and that's why the people in power, people who have wealth, they want Reform UK as well. There's a lot to untangle with all of this. So let's dive straight into this piece. So a few weeks ago, the authors of a study from the British Runnymede Trust wrote that in a political debate and media coverage in the UK on the topic of immigration, the pattern was one marked by hostile language, and that the definition of characteristics of migrants have been cemented as illegitimate over the past decade. And just a week later, a YouGov poll asked UK residents about immigration revealed what can only be described as catastrophic levels of ignorance. When asked if there are more immigrants staying in the UK legally or illegally, 33% of all YouGov poll respondents said there was much more in the UK illegally, while 15% said that there was somewhat more, and 14% said the opposite, that there was much more staying legally than illegally. Now, here the thing is, like, I hate the term illegally because there is no such thing as illegally. There is person claiming asylum, and their application gets rejected or accepted, and there are people who come in who come in and they disappear off the radar and they need to be rounded up. I don't like the term illegally because it paints human beings as vile scumbags who are breaking the law, and a lot of them aren't that, but we use very nasty language about migrants. And this language, legally and illegally, is also nasty language about humans. Remember, these are human beings just like you and I we're talking about here. So, for respondents who said they want a large number of immigrants to leave the UK, the level of ignorance was even more dramatic, with 55% that there is much more in the UK illegally, and 17% are answering somewhat more. Just 4% of those who want to deport immigrants answered that there was much more stay legally than illegally. So what are the actual numbers? So here's the thing, this is the problem. According to the 2022 UK census, there are 10.7 million legal immigrants in the UK, while Oxford University's Mirror Project on migration puts the number of illegal migrants at 750,000. In other words, there are roughly 14 times as many illegal migrants in the UK as there are illegal. In other words, much more stay legally. But that's not the problem. The problem is that despite the fact, like I said at the start, it doesn't matter if what the numbers say. People will assume people will assume if you throw these numbers and sixes at them, they won't care. They won't care. Their position is we have too many illegal migrants, we need to deport them all. That's their perception. And more and more and more, you're going to see more of this paranoia from people as time continues to go, as more of this messaging keeps hammering into people, and more you're going to see people from other nationalities, of different nationalities, because Britain is a multiculturalism country. You're going to see more and more people be viewed as, is that person an immigrant? Is that person a legal immigrant? Is that person a legal immigrant? This mind is going to start getting more and more warped into people, despite the fact that there are many of them who are living in the UK, working, contributing, and doing their job. People's mindsets are going to be created by this. And this should ring alarm bells about political rhetoric, media focus, and media silence. These numbers are all the more disturbing because they come after a Brexit referendum that revolved around almost entirely around immigration. For years running up to the vote, and for almost a decade after the vote, UK media broadcast thousands of hours and published thousands of articles about immigration. It has been nothing short of an obsession, particularly on the part of the right-wing media, such as the Daily Mail, Daily Express and GB News. And yet, despite the avalanche of coverage, half of the country are completely wrong in their assumptions about immigration to the UK. Again, because they don't tell you these numbers. The likes of the Daily Mail, the Daily Express and GB News, these right-wing rhetorics, they won't give you the facts because they have a narrative to play. And the narrative is, we have so many illegal immigrants in the UK. They won't give you the numbers, or they'll lie about the numbers. But these are more of accurate numbers of what they are. Or what can happen is they get a right-wing think tank to create a fake numbers for people to believe even more that there are more illegal immigrants than legal ones in the UK. That's what they'll do, to create again this perception, this idea that the UK is in crisis over immigration. Again, it's about creating a perception. Yeah, this is about creating a perception for them. So one explanation could be that the UK media that pushes for Brexit have absolutely no interest in facts or content on immigration that contradicted their line. For over 20 years, that same press has written countless emotional pieces about swarms and floods of illegal immigrants coming to the UK. It's no coincidence what the target audience for these media. For those in the UK who favour deporting immigrants, were 50% more likely to be completely misinformed about immigration than the general population, that of itself misinformed. But the deep lack of knowledge about immigration also suggests a broader failure of journalism beyond just our outlets favouring the political right. It's also a failure of mainstream journalism that often implies immigrant stereotypes fail to provide proper context. And this is the thing. The context is not there for everyone. Like, it's not just about Reform UK and Nigel Farage. It's about how the mainstream media talks about it, how they talk about it, the way they talk about it to the people, the way they discuss these things, and not just them, influencers, content creators, YouTubers like myself, and the way they talk about immigration, how they talk about it, the language that they use, the tone that they use. All these things play a part in how it creates this image and mindset about how people see immigration, as we're talking specifically in the UK here. But the deep lack of knowledge about immigration also suggested a broader failure of journalism beyond the outlets favouring the political right. It's also a failure of mainstream journalism that often amplifies immigrant stereotypes or fails to provide proper context. Consider another poll conducted by Ipsos in 2016, the year UK voters opted for Brexit, when respondents were asked to estimate the current Muslim population and to then estimate what that percentage would be 4 years later in 2020. In 2016, UK respondents estimated that Muslims made up 15% of the UK population. That would equal 9.9 million residents. The actual number was 5%, or 3.3 million. The same respondents that estimated that in 2020 Muslims would make up 21% of the UK population. 20%, or 14.1 million. The actual percentage by 2020 was 6.5 million, or 4.4 million. So the assumption was that there were going to be more than 10 million in the UK, 10 million more Muslims, literally 10 million more Muslims in the UK is what they predicted when they were asked this back in 2016. But the actual number is actually 4.4 million. Now, I have to put a caveat on that, and the caveat is, of course, obviously, the number has obviously fluctuated after the referendum vote was made, because it would have put off some people coming to the UK as well. So you do have to play that factor into the actual percentage as well. Think about those numbers for a second. In 2016, UK residents thought that the Muslim population was 3 times the actual number. and that by 2020, 1 in 5 people in the UK would be Muslim. Remember, perception is being painted here of what is actually. They are painting a perception. Again, context matters in this. Byline Times are not BSing you here. This is what they are giving. They are giving you the numbers that I am giving you here. 3 times the actual number. And that by 2020, 1 in 5 people in the UK would be Muslim. This is what they predicted. They also thought that by 2020 there would be at least 10 million more Muslims than there actually were. For these incorrect numbers to possible, the Muslim population of the UK would have to increase by an utter implausible 1 million per year. Yet that is precisely what many in the UK believed. So from 2016 to 2020, you would have to have an influx of over 1 million Muslims in order to reach that number. When you break it down, when you break down the numbers, you can see the faults in what they are saying. But again, many people don't look at the numbers, don't look at the details, and don't want to look at the details. In one final YouGov study from a few weeks ago, 41% of all UK residents said that the Muslim immigrants have a negative impact on the country, while 29% of Labour and 52% of Conservatives agree with that claim. These figures are dwarfed by Reform Party supporters, 87% of whom say Muslim immigrants were bad for the country. What is their based on? Based on 1 or 2 incidences by a certain section of Muslims. So their perception is because 1 or 2, there are some bad Muslims, just like there are some bad black people, there are some bad Asian people, there are some bad white people in the UK. Their perception is that because there are some, they assume that everyone who is a Muslim is bad. But they're not going to make that same perception when it comes to white British people. They're not going to make that same perception when it comes to black people or Asian people or another one, are they? Question mark. See, when they say I'm not racist, but it's very hard for them to paint the picture that they're not racist when they're not even prepared to look at the numbers and accept the realities that are in front of them. Reform, we should remember, are currently leading in the UK polls. There is a great deal of discussion about the impact of mediated disinformation on democracy, but it's important to remember that the lack of context and media silence can be just as damaging and serve similar functions as disinformation. If the vast majority of media coverage and political debate on immigration focuses on illegal immigrants, is it any wonder that people assume illegal immigration to be dominant? If that same debate and media coverage disproportionately focus on one religious and ethnic group, is it any wonder that people assume that group will be hugely overrepresented? Finally, if the group in question is assumed to be in the country and arriving in the country in that numbers widely out proportion with reality, is it any wonder that those who want to restrict immigration will see them as a negative? UK media coverage of immigration has been marked by high levels of emotive scapegoating and stereotyping. It has also been marked by an absence of nuance and context, and the poll numbers are, at least in part, the result of UK media refusing to provide that nuance and context. Numbers also raise the fundamental issue of how rational debate about immigration and integration can even take place with such enormous levels of ignorance about basic facts. Journalism doesn't have to print falsehoods in order to mislead. The issue that journalists and editors choose to emphasize and the things that they do not say or the context they do not provide can be just as damaging. It's a very good written piece here. And a lot of that does make sense if you think about it. So, I suppose a question that we ask ourselves here as we give my final thoughts is, well, Regan, what do we do about it? How do we stop this? The only thing, one of the things obviously is that we, if you want to call, excuse me, if you want to call ourselves left, centre left, if you want to call yourselves that, I don't care. I don't care about perception. I know people call me lefties, whatever. Don't care. It's really important that the media need to change the way that they discuss immigration. They need to change the way they discuss things. In particular, mainstream media that considers themselves centre or neutral. Not the right wingers, because we know they're not going to change their position. But those who are trying to be who try to make debates out of these, try to make fair and consecutive arguments debates, they're the ones who need to change their perception, because the reality is that they're making things just as bad as those on the right. And now, of course, the biggest fault of this all is the government, the current government, the Labour government. they're not doing enough to tackle, they're not doing enough to hold the media to account when it comes to proper use of headlines and information that they provide to the British public. And because of their failures to do so, I believe it's the Leveson inquiry, which has never been implemented, has been a big problem as well. It's not something that they have committed to doing in their manifesto, and time again the media have been allowed to carte blanche and get away with it. Remember, I told you, I said this already, the media want Reform UK as the next government in power. I told you this. But Labour think that because they have over 400 MPs, because of the victory that they had, they still have this perception in their mind that they think they're going to win the next general election still. There has been some major swings in elections in history, and this one can happen at the general election. If you think Reform UK can't win the next general election, you're fooling yourself. Polls are saying people are fed up of Conservatives, people are fed up of Labour, people want something new, and they're not prepared to hear from the Lib Dems or from the Greens. Well, the Lib Dems have been in power, so we've seen what they've done with power. They've messed it up, and people seeing the Green Party as nature and tree huggers, not actually a serious political party, even though the reality is that's not the case. But that's how normal average people, I would say, see the Green Party as. People think that the rhetoric and the language that Nigel Farage is using appeals to them, and they see him and his party as the only ones that can fix everything. But yet what they don't understand and what they don't realise is that for all the talk that Reform UK have said, all they're going to do is destroy the UK and destroy their lives and make their lives far, far worse than what Labour and the Conservatives will ever do to them. But what do you guys honestly think? What do you guys make about immigration, the media's distortion that is messing up people's views on immigration? Let me know your thoughts and more on all of this down in the comment section below. If you found this video informative, hit that like, share and subscribe button. Check out Rumble and Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. If you've watched to the end of the video, type in Pingu in your comment before writing more so that I know you've watched the video in full. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.